Being attractive to women is a learnable skill that any guy can master, but only if he's willing to do the work. And while it's a skill set that doesn't necessarily happen overnight, there are specific changes that can exponentially speed up your learning curve. If you want to save yourself months, maybe even years of time, as well as a lot of frustration and failure, I am going to share 6 changes that you can put into practice immediately that will put your dating and sex life on steroids. Welcome. I am Rob, and while I was preparing for today's video, I found myself reminiscing way back to a cold, sad, brutal day in January. And this was a long time ago when the girl that I dated all through college sent me an email dumping my ass, which set me on this wild journey to become better at meeting and attracting women. I went back to that period of my life because I really wanted to consider who I was, and I really tried to remember how I used to think, how I used to act. And then I contrasted that with the guy that I became, the person I am today. And when I would compare these two Robs side by side, I realized there was 6 crucial differences. 6 changes I made to the way that I thought, to my habits, to the way I behaved, even changes to the standards that I held myself to. And making these changes transformed me from a guy who was hopelessly mediocre with women to a professional dating coach. So let's get to it. 1, draw lines in the sand. The only way you're going to change anything is by taking action. Now, everyone knows that, yet most people don't live by it. That's because most people can't translate motivation into discipline. We've all felt a jolt of motivation at some point, but how often does that actually lead to new habits and noticeable changes? That's why it's so critical that you find a way to keep the momentum going and going long after the "I'm gonna change" high wears off. And that always involves times where you have to force yourself to go through the motions, even when you're tired, you're stressed, you're in a shitty mood, you're busy, or whatever other excuse inevitably rears its ugly head. For me, I knew that being introverted and being shy and being pretty awkward was holding me back from meeting and dating the types of women that I wanted. So I forced myself to do something that scared me every single day. I committed to approaching 3 women, day in and day out. No excuses, no pussing out. I forced myself to find a way to make it happen, even though at the time, I was working a full-time office job and I was going to graduate school at night, but I never let that busy schedule become an excuse. I'd go out my lunch break if I had to, and even if I had to drag myself through the motions, I'd get my 3 approaches in. In my mind, it was simply non-negotiable. And look, not all those approaches went great. In fact, in those early days, most were pretty terrible. And there were plenty of times where I felt like giving up, or I considered, I'll just put this off and I'll hold off until I have a little bit more time, which is really just giving up while also lying to yourself at the same time. Like Apollo Creed famously told Rocky, there is no tomorrow. And I was pretty stupid at the time, I was at least smart enough to realize that if I gave into my excuses today, I'd probably do the exact same thing tomorrow. So I drew those lines in the sand. And the same goes for you. The only way anything is going to change in your life is if you do the reps, which probably means doing something that scares the shit out of you. You can't compromise on this. Put those lines in the sand and do it. 2, prioritize your time over your pride. I want you to do me a favor here. I want you to remember the last time you saw an attractive woman. Maybe you saw her while you were out at a bar. Maybe it was while you were shopping at Walmart. Regardless where you were, I want you to put yourself back in that moment. Now, I'm going to assume that you're a single guy who wants to meet more attractive women, right? So it begs the question, why didn't you walk up and approach her? What stopped you? For every 100 guys who watch this, 98 of you, maybe even 99 of you, are more concerned with preserving your pride than you are with maximizing your time. And that's the difference between guys who sleep with maybe 4 to 10 women their entire lives and the guys in that 1% who sleep with hundreds of women. The types of guys who date the most desirable top 1% of women. And I'll tell you a secret that every 1% guy is in on. Pride doesn't matter. But time does. Your pride is just your ego. It's a story that you tell yourself about who you think you are, and it's a story that you hope other people think about you as well. That's why, when you're out with your buddies and you see some gorgeous girl, you don't just walk over to her and approach her. Nothing's stopping you from walking up to her and chatting her up, but you stop yourself because you're afraid if she might reject you and your friends see that, they might think you're a loser. Hell, you probably wouldn't even approach her even if you were all by yourself because you're even afraid of what you'll think about yourself if you get rejected. You're scared of putting a dent in your pride, and that's understandable because pride is pretty fragile. But here's what guys who get tons of women know. Pride is also complete bullshit. It's an illusion. No one, or at least no one whose opinion actually matters, is gonna care if you walk up to some girl, try to chat her up, and she rejects you. What's even more important is you'll never think less of yourself for approaching a girl. It's funny, back when I used to speak at a lot of these different men's conferences, I'd always look around the room and I'd ask, I'd say, how many of you guys have ever done an approach that you later regretted? And not once did a single hand ever go up. But whenever I'd ask, all right, so how many of you regret a time that you saw a girl and you didn't approach her? Guess what? Every hand in that room always went up. As men, we never regret the approaches that we do. We only regret the ones we don't do. And look, this certainly wasn't a belief that I had hardwired into my brain from birth. No, I had to discover the truth of this by proving it to myself, and proving it to myself by getting off my ass, putting those lines in the sand, and approaching women. And the funny thing about that is it wasn't even the approaches that I did that went particularly great that taught me this. Instead, I actually learned it from the approaches that went terribly, because I always still walked away feeling good about myself, feeling proud that I at least had the balls to try. And there's more to it than that. As I said earlier, I first drew those lines in the sand a long time ago. And between now and then, I've had experiences that were so beyond my wildest expectations, and I've been with some of the most beautiful women that I've ever seen, and I ended up with a very special lady who checked all the boxes for me and who I'm happily with to this day. And look, I don't say this to brag or to hype myself up. I'm saying it to put the fear of God into you. If I had let my pride stop me from doing those approaches way back when, none of that would have happened. I would have never developed the skills and the courage and the confidence and the mindsets that I needed to transform myself from a sickly nerd who sat at home on a Saturday night into an empowered nerd who has his own YouTube channel devoted to it. Now look, I don't want to draw this out too much, but I do want to remind you, every second that ticks by is a second you're never getting back. Every girl you pass on the street that you let walk out of your life without at least trying is another girl you're probably never gonna see again, an opportunity you're never gonna get back. And look, I get it. It's easy to let those moments slip by. It's comforting to tell yourself, well, I'll start tomorrow, or oh, I'll do it next time, which is why most guys end up in that 99%. Why most guys are flooded with regret when they realize the moments and the girls that they let slip away were everything and their bullshit pride was nothing. So tough love. But I hope this is what you think about the next time you see a beautiful woman. 3. Journal like a mofo. Outside of actually interacting with women, journaling about your interactions with women is one of the best ways to improve. To me, writing about my experiences, it always sort of felt like drinking a protein shake after an intense workout. That's because when you're writing, when you're reliving your experiences from this godlike perspective, you examine your behavior, but you do it through this lens that's non-emotional, right? This gives you this really unique perspective that helps you make sense of yourself, of other people, and the situation. Keeping a journal lets you suck that marrow from life, making the most of every day. So if you're not writing about your dating adventures and your misadventures, you're really leaving some easy growth and self-improvement on the table. I know my fastest and most intense learning spurts happened when I was journaling religiously. So if you're serious about improving your success with women, or really about improving any other aspect of your life, you should get serious about keeping a journal. 4. Get comfortable with uncertainty. I can always tell the difference between a guy who's great with women and a guy who's struggling. Guys who struggle with women they're always afraid of uncertainty, right? So they try to anticipate everything a woman might say, everything she might do. They're trying to plan for everything because that gives them this illusion of control. But it's precisely that. an illusion, because it's impossible to anticipate or plan for everything that might happen. No one ever feels completely ready. And it's more important to take action than to sit around collecting information like some kind of intellectual hoarder. Use dating advice as a supplement to your interactions with women. Think of it like a roadmap. It can help you get to where you need to go, but if you just stay locked up in your house staring at the roadmap, you're not going anywhere. So open that fucking door, step outside, and embrace the unknown. Stop trying to be perfect, stop trying to control everything, and instead surrender yourself to uncertainty. 5, be your own biggest fan. When you look in the mirror, who do you see? Most people see their reflection, but they don't see the thoughts and beliefs that are shaping their reality. But to truly transform your life, especially your dating life, you have to understand and reshape those underlying beliefs. And as crazy as this is probably going to sound, you need to adopt an almost delusional sense of your own self-worth. For me, this was actually a really hard change to make, but once I adopted it, my life changed dramatically, and that's not an exaggeration or hyperbole. When I was awkward and I lacked confidence, I prided myself on being a realist. I thought it was somehow virtuous that I honestly assessed how I stacked up against other guys, and whenever I'd meet a girl, I'd always be weighing the pros and the cons in my head of why she should choose me versus why she shouldn't choose me, and I now realize that that made me a complete idiot. My interaction with women improved exponentially when all I did was list the pros of why a girl should be with me. If I was competing against another guy, no matter who he was, I'd only fixate on all the reasons why I'm the better choice and ignore anything to the contrary. Even if a guy was objectively taller than me, better looking than me, or had more money than me, it did not matter. My brain would always find all the reasons why I'm still the better choice, like I'm cooler than him. I would tell myself, oh no, I have better game than him. I'm bigger than him. Whatever. It doesn't even have to be logical. It doesn't have to make sense. All it needed to be was pro-Rob, because that's what I chose to believe. So if you don't think like this, you might think that this might make me an asshole or that I'm delusional. But again, I've never met a guy in that 1% who didn't think like this. If you're going to give me a choice between being realistic or being attractive, I'm choosing attractive every motherfucking time. You want to see realistic? This guy's realistic about himself. This guy's delusional. Seems like an easy choice to me. And since I've been on both sides of it, what I've now come to realize is the real asshole is the guy who doesn't think like this, who doesn't even give himself a shot, who rejects himself before a woman even has a chance. When you're a guy in that 1%, there's gonna be no shortage of clowns who are jealous, butthurt, or angry that a girl that they've been hopelessly in the friend zone with for years is chasing you, is sending you those "you up" texts at 1 a.m. on a Saturday night. So when you have all these haters in the peanut gallery, why would you join them against yourself? Take control of the most valuable piece of real estate that you own, which is what's between your ears. You get to choose what you believe about yourself. So why wouldn't you believe that you're a girl's best option? 6, become anti-fragile. In dating and personal development, being anti-fragile is not just about bouncing back from setbacks. It's about thriving because of them. The concept of anti-fragility goes beyond resilience. Resilient people survive challenges. Anti-fragile people improve because of them. So, how do you become anti-fragile in your dating life? First, you need to start viewing every rejection, every awkward date, every misstep as a learning opportunity. Instead of licking your wounds after a rejection, ask yourself, what can you learn from the experience? Maybe did you show too much interest too soon? Did you fail to read a cue? Did you hesitate before making a move? These are missteps, yes, but they're not failures. More importantly, you're not a failure. You need to detach yourself from the process. Stop internalizing everything a woman says or everything a woman does as a judgment about you. Instead, simply see it for what it is, which is feedback. It's feedback to your approach. It's not you that she rejected, it's what you did. Becoming anti-fragile also requires regularly pushing your boundaries. The more you step outside of your comfort zone, whether it's approaching women, taking the masculine lead, or pushing the boundaries in conversation, the more that you set yourself up for growth. And look, I'm not saying that you should run out and be reckless, but I do encourage you to experiment and see what happens. Learn from the outcome. By embracing an anti-fragile approach, you're not just preparing for the uncertainties of dating, but actively using them to your advantage. This approach will make you more dynamic and more attractive, a guy who's capable of handling whatever a woman, or even just life in general, throws at him. All right, man, I enjoyed sharing those 6 changes with you because I know how life-changing and how powerful they can be. And it's funny, when I first started out with this goal of improving myself and my interactions with women, I wrote out a detailed description of the man I wanted to become. And I was very specific. I described in the present tense exactly the way that I saw myself carrying myself, the way that I spoke to people, the way other people responded to me. And I remember at the time, I almost felt like I was writing a piece of fiction, like I was imagining this character in a novel rather than projecting out this guy that I was hoping to become. But still, I wrote it all down. I put it on, I remember I was writing it on this piece of loose leaf and I folded it in half and I stashed it away. I think I put it in a book or something. And it was funny because after some time had passed, I had this girl back at my place and she was going through some of my stuff and the folded piece of paper fell out and she picked it up and she started reading it. And I remember my first reaction was just sheer panic. And then I thought I was gonna feel embarrassed, but as I listened to her and as she was reading through it, I realized I had become exactly the guy that I described. And I became that guy because I made changes and took action. And now it's your turn. It's time for you to write your story of dating success. Now, I hope the changes that we discussed in this video do more than simply get you motivated. I hope you understand that change is about more than lip service. Positive growth and self-improvement happens when you follow a plan and do the reps. And while you're the only one who can take action and do those reps, I'd like to continue to help and guide you along the way. So one way you can do that is by subscribing to the channel and interacting with me in the comment section. But another way you can do it is by looking into a course that I created with Bobby Rio called Unlock the Scrambler. You can learn more about it by checking out this link, and I'm also gonna put a link to it down in the description somewhere. But the reason I'm recommending going through a course like this is because we really do a deep dive into attraction, into seduction, and into the psychology of how to make a woman obsessed with you. If you want a step-by-step blueprint for how to get that girl, especially if she's one of those hard to get girls, then you should definitely check out this link and learn more. And now with that, I'm gonna wrap things up, but if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that, and also connect with me on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. And other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.